G'day everyone, great that you could join us this week. This week we're into Acts chapter 18 and we're again hanging out with Paul and Silas, and we have seen them kind of move through. Obviously we've lost a lot because of where we're going to go next. So last week we left Paul in Athens, and he was kind of discussing and debating kind of who God was and how they could know God in Athens. And then this week we find him in Corinth. So he's been in Athens, and he's in Corinth. We're running out of light, so it's just as good as we can get at the moment, but hopefully you can get the picture. But he's in Corinth, and he's hanging out there, and he's doing his stuff, and he's spending his time, he's devoted his time to preaching and teaching to both Jews and Gentiles. That's what he's doing. He's trying his absolute hardest. Timothy and Silas come from Athens to Corinth, and when that happens, Paul devotes all of his time to the Jews, to trying to get them to understand the gospel. But they reject him. And they reject him in such a way that Paul goes, I'm going to the Gentiles. No, that's it. You've been told. And that was his practice. Go first to the Jews, tell them the good news, explain to them, because they should get it the best, right? They've had the Old Testament. Explain to them how the Messiah has come from the Old Testament. And then invariably when they rejected him, he would then go to the Gentiles who would receive his message, which is what happens in Corinth. Now there again is a bit of a fuss. The Jews in Corinth grab Paul and they drag him before Gallio, the proconsul, the council, and they throw him down and they try to say Paul's doing stuff and he's doing the wrong thing. And the Gallio, he doesn't care. He just goes, no, you're Jews, and it's to do with your religion. I don't care. You can't do anything. He's not interested at all. He could not be bothered doing his job, which was actually leading and governing. And so he just, I'm not interested. I'm not going to do anything about it. But they're in Corinth. They're doing their stuff. He meets some people, Priscilla and Aquila, and they're followers of Jesus, and he hangs out with them for a little bit, and then he's going home. He's going back to Jerusalem because he does these trips, right? And often he would gather money. So on his way through Macedon, he would gather money so that when we read Thessalonians, when we read kind of different books of the Bible of the New Testament, we see that Paul is doing a collection for the Jerusalem church who are going through a famine. And so the wealthy kind of Greek cities and stuff, the believers would give money to go to the Jerusalem church because they needed it. So that's what he was doing, and he's heading back there. And so he sets off and he lands in Ephesus, and he leaves Priscilla and Aquila there. And he is going on still again. And so he does. So he stops off in Ephesus. He kind of drops them off. He says a few things. People in Ephesus go, we want you to stay. Can you hang out with us? Can you stay with us? And Paul goes, I'm hoping I can. If the Lord is willing, I will. But I need to leave. And so he leaves. But then a guy comes called Apollos. Now, I'm going to just read this out a little bit because we kind of see that where Paul goes, and then we get to Apollos. So that's Acts 18. Again, I encourage you to read the chapter. It's not a super long one, easy to do in a week. A couple of verses a day and you'll knock it off. So read through the chapter if you can. We catch up with Apollos in verse 24. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord and spoke with great fervour and taught about Jesus accurately, though he only knew the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. When Apollos wanted to go to Achaia, the brothers and sisters encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. When he arrived, he was a great help to those who by grace had believed, for he vigorously refuted his Jewish opponents in public debate, proving from the Scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah. So we hear about this guy Apollos, and he goes around and he too is trying to teach, and he's fired up for God, but he only knows a little bit. He only knows the baptism of John. Now, the baptism of John, we'll get to that next week, definitely, because Paul does talk about it and explain why, but he only knows kind of a part of the gospel. And that part ends with repentance from sin, because that's what John's gospel was all about. But what we see is Priscilla and Aquila take this young man who's fired up, and they want to teach him more. Now, I have known plenty of people who have not followed Jesus at all, and then they've become followers of Jesus, and they're passionate. They are super fired up. They want people to know about Jesus because their life has been changed and radically and drastically and recently. So I want everyone to know about this. And that's their thing. And they want to go out and they want to tell everyone. And quite often what happens is they don't, they've only just met Jesus. So, they get caught up and they stumble and they kind of trip over some things because in their zeal and their energy to share Jesus with people, they're going from a very, very small base of knowledge. And so it's not that we want to stop people from sharing, but there is that kind of in there of looking to people who are kind of more well established in following Jesus in the faith and learning from them more and more so that we can better share Jesus with others. Now that's a really big deal and it's a huge thing. It's important for all of us. I'm the same as you. It doesn't matter how old we are. And sometimes it's not actually even about age. I know a guy who is older than me, but a more recent convert. He came to know Jesus much into his adult life. So for him, there's plenty of things, even though he's older than I am, there's things that I've just walked with Jesus longer and so had more experience in that sense. So there's stuff that someone who is older can learn from younger. It's whoever's more mature in their faith. It's worth us looking, who do you know? Who do you look at? Who do you know around you? Hopefully there's plenty of people in the whole church, but who do you know that you go, if I've got questions about God, if I've got questions about Jesus, I'd like to go and ask that person. I've seen how they live, I've known them a long time, or I trust them. Now hopefully you feel that way about, obviously myself and your other youth group leaders, Simon and Lauren. Hopefully you feel that way about a bunch of people, but it is worth having, somebody, maybe it's not one of us, but somebody you get along really, really well with, someone who you can trust, someone who has shown that they know what it is to follow Jesus really well. And you go, they get it. And I'd like to actually have that time invested in me. And go up and ask him. So we call it mentoring now. We've got a word for it, but it's just discipleship. That's the actual word for it, which is helping people be disciples of Jesus. A disciple is someone who follows, someone who wants to live the same way. So as a follower of Jesus, to know how we can follow Jesus well, know how we can follow Jesus the best way possible. Sometimes we need someone who has followed Jesus longer than us to be able to come alongside us in a long way and say, look, hey, this is what you can do, this is how you can do it. And so maybe we're okay for a little bit, we can go back to that person, we have regular catch-ups, we talk about the struggles we have with following Jesus. Because Apollos, he was fired up, he knew his scriptures, he was all for it. Like he was up there, he'd gone from Alexandria, so he had travelled to Ephesus to do this. But he still needed someone who had been a follower of Jesus longer to kind of help him and guide him and send him in the right way. So we shouldn't be upset, we shouldn't be afraid, we shouldn't kind of be standoffish. Any time there might be a chance that someone who knows more about following Jesus could speak into our lives. That's a good thing, and we should look out for it. I loved Bible college because there were people who knew the Bible far more than I did. They were unbelievable with how they knew their Bibles. People who knew their Bibles, they'd been following Jesus a long time, who I got to spend a long time with, having them input into my life. Huge blessing. Take it from me, it is an awesome thing for following Jesus. It helps you so much. So take the time, find someone to help you do that. It's really worthwhile. Have a good week.